Hi, I'm Aruna. I'm one of the mentors for the New Year New Skills Game Jam. I'm thrilled to see how much excitement has been garnered around this jam, and especially for a beginner jam to have such a great response is so exciting to me. I'm really looking forward to seeing all the games that come out at the end of the week. Since this is a beginner friendly jam, I'm assuming that a lot of you might have never made a game before or never participated in a jam before. So I thought it would be really helpful for me to make a presentation on some advice that I could offer new jammers in the space so that you can keep the energy going and collaborate on something you can be proud of. I will start by talking about the goals for a game jam, specifically this one, but also game jams in general. And then I'll go into some advice about brainstorming before talking about some ways to navigate the long project that this will be. There's also a neat trick that I would like to share with some of my fellow non coders here. As a narrative designer who had to learn a bunch of different systems, I found a way to make sure to minimize the amount of errors I made in those systems. And I'd like to share that with some of you. There's also some information about me on the screen. I have over 6 years of narrative design experience, and I've worked on large studios as well as currently being in indie, and I've mostly worked on live ops games. So you signed up for a game jam. Why? The main goal of a game jam is to make a playable game from scratch. That's about it. There will be jams that are competitive or have prizes at the end, but all in all, the goal of a game jam is to set aside time to make a playable game from end to end. So, within that framework, you should learn or further explore software processes or a role that you're interested in within the industry. Work with the team on a creative project, which might not be something that everyone does for their day jobs. You'll get to witness the full game dev pipeline from ideation to quality assurance to the quote unquote launch, which is submitting the game at the end to the itch.io page. And you'll get to meet some aspiring or new game devs as well within the Discord and within your team. Remember that this is not a competition. There are jams that are, this one is not. Ideally, don't come into the game jam with the game idea ready to go. Those are probably better saved for personal projects. The game that you make at the end of the jam does not have to be perfect or even good. It just has to be working. People need to be able to access it, interact with it, and that is it. You can't be worried about the quality of a game that never existed. So make sure that your goal is to complete. You may find out that during the game jam, you will have to change your initial scope or design of the game, and that's perfectly fine. This is a learning experience, including the ability to pivot and change. Also, remember that you are not here to launch your brand new indie studio with your team, unless, of course, you have explicitly decided that with your team before joining the jam. This is not really the place to be expecting a great breakout hit as much as sticking with the goal of learning something new that maybe otherwise you wouldn't have time or the ability to do by yourself. So let's talk about brainstorming and ideation. You might have already started this process after you learned the theme of the game jam. And if you and your team are already into it and have found something that they liked and want to do, then please go ahead and do that. Do not change after this presentation. But for those of you who might still be struggling to find something that your team really wants to collaborate on, here are two main ways to brainstorm to get into it. For example, you can start by word association. I use the example of a theme of time, which is incredibly generic. I purposefully didn't choose our theme because I didn't want to bias the way that teams chose their projects. And so here is a sort of very quick and dirty example of a brainstorm through word association, where I try to come up with a bunch of themes that might be interesting to explore. I will not go through this or the second brainstorm that'll be on the slide. You can pause the video to see it. But the second option is to start with mechanics that you might be excited in exploring. Since this is a game, interactivity is also a big part of making a game. And so if there's something that you really enjoy making, you can start with that as a point to jump off on. In the end, you want to merge them, put pieces together, see what gets the group interested, and before deciding, see what seems to be achievable, both in scope and in having enough resources to find out how to do the thing that you want to do. If there's an idea during brainstorming that you really enjoy, but the team as a whole decides to do something else, take a notebook and write that idea down for a personal project. I have at many points come up with ideas during game jams that I only later made into stories or games separately. Just keep in mind that someone else might do the same about the same idea. Your brainstorming is going to be collectively owned by your team, and so you should be okay with that. The next thing I really want to talk about is during the jam. There are other mentors who will talk about production and about scope and about organizing your workflow. I want to talk about what it feels like to take a break. The game jam is a week long. And remember that this is not a job. You are not being paid for this, or at least we are not paying you for this. But you likely have a team that is relying on you. There's no shame in needing to take a step back, take a break, or deal with something else during this week. It's very unlikely that everyone will have consistent free time. So there's only one rule that I want you to remember, and that is to communicate. There are some ways to prepare for sudden changes in people's time or ability to continue with or finish the game jam. One is to report in regularly, especially for tasks you've accepted. This does not need to be everyone at the same time, but post updates maybe in the morning or at the end of the day when you're signing off, and take that moment to maybe delegate tasks to other team members who might have more free time or less on their plate than you do at that current moment. And if you find that you can't finish something that you have designed, it might be a good idea to get the team together and discuss some alternatives instead. Regular check ins are also a great time to celebrate victories. If you just learned something or you were able to troubleshoot a bug that you couldn't figure out before, this is the time to celebrate moving forward. Another good way to mitigate the risks of losing time during the jam is to design modularly. Know what can be removed easily while still keeping the heart of your game in your design. If your artist, for example, needs to step away, try to look for free assets to fill in that time so that it's easier when they get back. Or if you no longer have a coder, see if you can switch the genre of the game while still keeping some of the aspects of the game that made you excited to make it to begin with. Usually, it's much harder to subtract from a larger design than it is to add on later, only because when you build the foundation broadly, you will often find redundancies as you keep building up, as opposed to building an additional part that you then attach onto the game in a meaningful way later. Remember what the core goal of the jam is. You have already signed up in order to try and make something. Do your best to get it done. I have faith in you. You've made the first step. Well, that's all from me. I hope you're really excited to get going, and I hope some of these tips resonated with some of you. Best of luck to all of you. I am very much looking forward to seeing all the games in a week. Feel free to reach out to me on various social media and connect with me, or even go check out some of my awful, awful game jams in the past. I am very proud of every single one of them. And for those of you who were paying attention to the agenda, you know that I'm not quite done. In fact, um, stick around if you want some advice from a narrative designer who struggles to code. This will be especially useful for teams who don't have a coder or people learning software that has formatting that you haven't really used for before. I've found a way to kind of cheat rewriting code over and over, and that is something that I call automation, aka Google Sheets is my coding language. So let me show you the narrative engine that I am most familiar with. This is Ink by Inkle. Studios, and I use this in my day to day. So I've set up a very simple interaction here. You can see on the right, which is the testing area, that I've made a little dialogue where you and I are interacting, and I am asking you when the bus is getting here. And you can choose to tell me that it's in about 5 minutes or that I just missed it. If you choose in about 5 minutes, you can see I say, great, it looks like I'm going to be on time today. And meanwhile, if I click reset here and you tell me that I've just missed it, I say, dang, I guess I'll be late today, alas. So this is a very simple interaction. But if you look on the left here, there's a lot more complexity to this. Making code like this for me is very likely to have errors in it. But you can probably see here that there's some repeated things such as speaker equals me and speaker equals Aruna. And this like curly bracket speaker colon, which comes up with, yes, me or Aruna here. These seem to be repeated quite a few times. I would prefer to not write this out manually every single time. So for this, let's hop onto Google Sheets. Here I've just rewritten the rough interaction that we just saw, and I want to break down some of the code into something that is more legible or recreatable for me. So I'll start with the repeating speaker call, where I will just set whoever is speaking here. And I don't have to write what was previously speaker equals open quotation marks, name, and then close quotation marks. So I will simply instead write the name here as me or Aruna separately. And then I will write hello and hello. And is the bus getting here? And here I will try to automate the setting the speaker part of this. And for that, I will use a function called concatenate, which just attaches things end to end with each other. So here, for example, I want to say concatenate this strange string of things, speaker equals. And then because I'm using quotation marks, I need to use the Excel or Google Sheets version of what a open quotation marks is. And I'll separate it with a comma, and I will write for character and 34, which is the character for quotation marks. And then I want it to add whatever I write in this column. So I'm just going to click here, and so it'll add whatever's in D2 there. And then the next thing I add is one more closed quotation marks, 34. Ooh. And then I will hit enter. And so here you can see that I have made the right formula here by doing that. But the best thing about this is that I can just drag this down and the formula will repeat for whatever is here. And that's great. I love that for me and for you. The next step would be to add the choices, which are in about 5 minutes, or you just missed it. I'm going to actually just skip ahead a little bit here uh, in the interest of not making this video a 30-minute tutorial. I am just going to skip ahead to when I have written a more full version here. So I've gone ahead and done a few other things. For one, I'm going to add something to this, which is car 10, which is a page break, so enter. And then I want the dialogue to also be concatenated with this. And I hit enter, and so you can see it's a speaker, me, hello. Whereas here, I have added a if statement, which means if the first thing is true, then do a thing, and if it is false, do a different thing. And I have made that if statement is blank, which means is this blank? If it is blank, do nothing. But if it comma, isn't blank, I want you to concatenate whatever's written here with whatever's written here. And when I hit enter, you can see it makes it a choice in about 5 minutes. This seems like a lot of work to just add an asterisk in front of dialogue, but when it really gets interesting is when I combine these two things. I want this to be smart enough to know when something is a choice, it should be written like this, and when something is just dialogue, it should be written like this. So what I need to do is take this concatenate formula, copy that, and then here, where it says, if this is blank, do nothing. I actually want to say, hey, if F4 is blank, that means this is dialogue. I want you to make a speaker role, add whatever's here, and then write it in dialogue. So instead of these just this empty two quotation marks here with nothing in it, I'm going to paste the formula I just wrote. And I'm going to correct some stuff first by adding brackets around that formula just so it's nice and contained. And then I'm going to say, okay, I'm not checking D3. I'm actually checking D4, which is the same line as here. And I'll also be checking E4. And that should do it. So if I hit enter, what it should do is absolutely nothing. But if I was to say, Aruna is saying in about 5 minutes, and it is not a choice, it's just a line of dialogue, I will delete choice, and it'll automatically put it in the right order. If I then drag this formula up, again, nothing seems to change, but it is dynamic when I change it to a choice to change the way that it lays itself out. And this is what saves me so much time, because I only have to do this once. After that, this has become a smart coding structure. Of course, I don't want to spend, like I said, 20 minutes on this. Please reach out to me in Discord if you would like a longer tutorial about how this works. This was what I had hoped would be a short tease that has become about half the length of the whole talk. Terribly sorry about that, but I really was excited to show this to all of you. So if anyone is interested in learning more, please hit me up in the Discord. Otherwise, good jamming to all of you, and I hope you have a great week.